Our story begins at a cemetery, set in Halloween of 1986. A little boy named Ben walks there in a costume, carrying a bag for trick-or-treating. Soon his bigger brother, Jason, joins him. He wants them to go a certain route because all the good houses are on that side of town. He claims it's also the fastest way. Ben thinks Jason is taking that route to meet a girl named Lisa. Jason says it doesn't matter because Ben will still go trick-or-treating regardless. He'll just be doing it while Lisa is with them. Then Jason starts running and hides behind a grave. He waits for Ben for a few seconds so he could scare him. However, the boy isn't coming around, so Jason comes out and calls Ben. While looking for him, he finds his mask on the ground. This worries him to the point that he starts calling out to Ben even more. After a short while, he hears his brother scream. He checks the area and opens a gate. Then he sees candy on the ground. Suddenly, a girl scares him from behind. It's Lisa, laughing at Jason. Ben is there too, laughing with her. After that, the three of them walk elsewhere. Jason is upset that such a joke was played on him. He doesn't want anyone to know about it. As they walk, Ben tries to go trick-or-treating at a house that Jason tells him he shouldn't go to. He says no one lives there, but Ben claims to have seen someone there. He knocks on the door, accidentally cutting himself on one of its somewhat sharp ornament. We see his blood on the door flow unnaturally before it disappears. It seems to cause the door to open and Ben gets quickly pulled inside. The scary situation prompts Jason to rush in there, yelling for his little brother. The next scene shows Lisa walking alone while injured. She gets in front of a police car, which causes an officer come out to tend to her. All she can tell him is that something is taking their lives. Confused, the officer asks who is doing that and where. After Lisa tells him the location of the house, she says it knows the fears of its victims. Snakes suddenly appear, prompting her to make a desperate plea. However, the policeman does not see them. A thick one wraps itself around the poor girl and takes her life. Later, the officer drives up to the house where he calls for backup. We find out his name is Rance, and he cautiously enters the house. He finds Ben's mask on the floor. As he keeps walking, someone falls from the ceiling behind him. Then, the body gets invisibly tossed against the wall. Rance has a hard time believing what he just witnessed. He approaches the body in fear and sees words inscribed on the person's back. Those words are, "Never, never knock." Perhaps this is a statement referring to what should never be done to the front door of this house. The person this frightening message is written on is Jason. All of a sudden, the front door closes by itself. In the next year, kids come to attempt trick-or-treating at this house. We hear over the radio how the murders that happened there were never solved. A decade passes, showing us more kids knocking on the door of the house. The radio warns everyone not to come there to do that. Another decade passes, to show us that knocking on the door of this house has become a local phenomenon. Finally, we land on the year 2017. 3 decades have passed since the house claimed those 3 young people, who would have all been middle-aged now had they survived. At present, we focus on 4 new friends on Halloween Day, talking about a girl named Grace. They are already in costume, ready for the night. The one named Leah talks about Grace, who got into a car accident last year. Sadly, her mother did not survive the crash. The next scene shows us the mentioned girl as she sits in her room, looking at a photo of her with her family. She remembers the car accident. It saddens her that her mom lost her life during that horrific event. Soon, her little sister barges into the room. She is Jenna, who says she misses their mom too. We find out that they at least have a father and he will arrive home very late. This means the sisters will be alone on Halloween night. After a short while, the doorbell rings. Jenna opens the door to see it's Grace's friend, Leah, with her 3 friends. Then Grace comes out in a hippie costume. Jenna is dressed to resemble the devil. After Lee introduces Grace to her friends, a girl named Sydney proposes that they go to the House of Horrors. Alone with Leah, Grace tells her that she's sorry her little sister had to come, but Leah is very understanding of that. Following this, we see all of them at the town's Halloween festival. Being new in town, Grace comments on how they take their Halloween seriously. Shortly after, they enter the House of Horrors. A maniac with a chainsaw comes out to scare them once they are inside. Moving about separately, we watch them have a fun, scary time. In his room, the one named Gavin starts getting truly scared until the girl, Amy, finds him. Afterward, the duo gets discovered kissing by Jenna. This is problematic for Gavin because he is Sydney's boyfriend. They ask her if she's going to say anything about it. The girl tells them she doesn't care. When she leaves, Gavin worries that she might speak about it. This is when Amy tells the boy that Sydney treats him like dirt. She gets upset that he goes after Jenna. Gavin soon finds the rest of the gang. Sydney starts talking about Jenna and Gavin fears what she might say. Lucky for him, she merely says that Jenna wasn't that scared of the place. She also says they should now go to the Never Knock house. So they all start heading there. Leah assures Grace it will be fun. After that, we get a flashback of what happened at the ominous house. This flashback takes place while Jenna, along with her sister, get the grisly history of the Never Knock house from their new friends. Grace has a hard time believing that 3 kids lost their lives there. She asks who took their lives, only to get the answer that nobody knows. Eventually, they arrive at the house, which is now blocked off by a fence. Sydney tells the new girls that one has to knock on the door 3 times while saying never, never knock, to see if the stories are true. However, Grace wants no part in this. She starts taking Jenna home, but the young girl says she's not scared. She runs away and starts climbing the fence that separates them from the house. However, she cuts her hand at the top and the injury is considerably bloody. Since she is on the other side, the rest of the group climbs the fence to join her. Jenna knocks on the door 3 times as she says the 3 magic words Sydney mentioned. She also uses her bloody hand to mark the door. At that moment, Grace starts walking away with Jenna again. It seems she has had enough of this nonsense. Amy gets them to turn around due to her scared voice. They all observe Jenna's blood moving on the door like we previously saw. It causes the door to open, injecting the gang with fear. The reasonable thing to do at a time like this is to run away. Thankfully, that is what the group does. In the meantime, we witness a black monster moving around in the house. Grace yells out to Jenna because she's not with them. Then the door of the house shuts. Following this, Gavin thinks Jenna got scared and ran home. He also thinks someone is messing with them. We learn that it's not the first time they knocked on that door. Yet we know it's their first time knocking on it with blood. Caring for Grace, Leia says she could go in the house with her to look for her sister. But no one wants to go in there. Therefore, the friends walk outside to search for Jenna. Grace picks up the devil's ears she dropped. Subsequently, they enter the cemetery, where they keep yelling out to her. Grace gets a call from her dad. She lies by saying that everything is good. After the phone call, she tells her friends she is going back home. Leia is the first to start going with her and the rest of them join in, though Sydney hesitates the most. Soon, Grace gets a call that says it's from Jenna. However, instead of her sister on the other end, she hears ominous static. Once the call is over, she calls Jenna's phone and hear it ringing in the distance. The plan to go home is cancelled. Now, the group heads to the direction of Jenna's ringing phone. In the next scene, they walk in the woods, where they keep following the ringing phone. It seems like it's always the same distance away from them. Either Jenna is moving by herself, or someone is taking her somewhere. Leia keeps following Grace, while Sydney tells her boyfriend they aren't going. She is scared that the stories about the Never Knock house might be true. She is starting to believe them because of what they witnessed a few moments ago. Amy reassures her they are just ghost stories. Additionally, Gavin holds Sydney's face in his hands to lovingly assure her that Never Knock is not real. In a few seconds, we see how annoyed Amy is with how much Gavin cares for his girlfriend. After that, Leia and Grace arrive at a place that looks like a maze made out of stacks of hay. They start going through it and we see the impressive size of the area. It's going to take some effort to go through such a construction. Meanwhile, Sydney gets her skirt stuck on a branch. When she takes her time removing it, she gets left behind. At that moment, she finds Jenna's phone ringing, so she answers it. Grace is on the other end, learning that Sydney found Jenna's phone, but not Jenna. Unexpectedly, a long needle punctures her face, causing the poor girl to scream. Gavin hears it, along with Amy. They call out to her while another needle punctures her shoulder. Soon Sydney arrives at the hay maze with blood on her. There, she gets impaled again through the stomach. She perceives a sharp claw coming out from behind the maze wall. This is followed by her seeing the black monster. A boy stands there to watch in confusion how she suffers, and then he runs away. She starts going through the maze in her severely injured state. When Gavin arrives, he sees the monster take her life. There is nothing he can do now except tell Amy they have to go. Afterward, they meet up with the other 2 girls. Gavin informs them that a monster took Sydney's life. At this point, he believes the Never Knock monster is real. However, no one else believes him. After realizing no one is on his side, he starts running away. Grace goes in the other direction to find her sister. We see that momentarily, Leia doesn't know who to go with. It only takes a few seconds for her to choose to follow Grace. Then, Amy catches up to a frightened Gavin. She wants to know what he saw. He tells her about how the monster knew that Sydney was scared of needles. Shortly after, his fear starts getting presented to him in the form of Amy's eyes having turned dark red. When blood starts coming out of them, he runs away. Elsewhere, Amy keeps searching for the boy who lost his girlfriend. She calls out to him, but he only perceives a blood-covered version of her. There is no way he is going to go near her while she is like that, so he keeps hiding. As Grace runs, she suddenly encounters flames in the maze. They appear behind her too. Once Leia catches up to her, Grace mentions fire appearing everywhere. It is her ultimate fear, the same element that took her mother's life in the car crash. Although Leia does not perceive the flames, they both see the black monster. Grace suffers as she remembers the fire brought about by the accident. Soon, they start running away until they eventually exit the hay maze. Grace looks behind them to see it burn, but Leia tells her the fire isn't real. She doesn't know is that the fire is likely very real for Grace, the same way the snakes were real to the late Lisa. Following this, we see Gavin walking. A bloody Amy comes out to say she has been looking for him. Unfortunately, he continues with his repelled behavior toward her. As he runs away, she runs after him, asking him to tell her what's going on. All he does is get into a stranger's car to hit. In there, he perceives blood dripping down the windows. Gavin is just trapping himself in a more unsafe place. The monster is in the backseat, starting to take Gavin's life. Seeing that he's in trouble, Amy tries to use a rock to break the windows. However, it's too late. The door opens and he falls out. All Amy can do now is mourns over his demise. At that moment, her biggest fear starts to manifest. Grief turns into horror as she sees insects coming out of Gavin's mouth, which prompts her to run away. Later, the 2 girls find a lifeless Gavin with the police nearby. Leia is scared that the monster will claim all of them. This is when Grace assures her that it won't claim anyone else. Upon approaching an officer, they see the monster in the backseat of the car Gavin sat in. Of course, they flee the scene in fear. Sadly, the officer doesn't see anything, so he runs after them. We then see the duo hiding from the law. Leia sees a Doberman nearby that growls at them. We find out this is her greatest fear, and she starts running from it. Meanwhile, Grace follows. Elsewhere, the girls sit together in fear. Grace puts forward the idea that perhaps what they perceive cannot hurt them if they don't believe in it. But the black monster is right there with them, terrifying the two into running away. A couple of Dobermans make it exceedingly difficult for them to keep running the way they were. Therefore, Grace resorts to breaking the window of a building that they both enter. Sadly, Grace injures her leg coming in that way. The duo gets startled by Amy's presence there. The traumatized girl doesn't behave like herself anymore. She tells them the monster wanted them there to bring about her demise. Grace tries to stand, only to discover that the injury she acquired prevents her from doing so. She then asks Amy if she has her phone. When Amy looks at it, she sees maggots crawling on the device. Soon, the monster appears and starts taking her. The poor girl looks in the mirror to see bugs crawling on her. The girls try helping her, but sadly, Amy experiences her final moment. Eventually, they exit the room, with Leia supporting Grace. A Doberman in the hallway forces them to exit the building. 5 seconds go by and a van urgently pulls up to them. The man driving it instructs them to get in. He says he knows what's after them. Hearing those words, the girls decide to listen to the man. During the drive, Grace wants to know where he's taking them. He doesn't answer her. He simply gives the injured girl a newspaper from 30 years ago that shows him in it. He explains he's the one who found those lifeless kids at the Never Knock house. This means he is Rance, the policeman from the 1980s. He informs the girls that everyone thought he was crazy due to what he reported observing. They learn he was watching them at the Never Knock house, because he usually watches it every Halloween. Leia asks him why he didn't stop them from doing what they did if he knew about the consequences. He reasons that he had to find out whether he was crazy or not, since he only saw the horror happen once in 30 years before tonight. Suddenly, when Grace thinks she saw Jenna outside, she gets Rance to stop the van. She gets out to chase her sister as best as she can with her wounded leg. However, for some reason, Jenna is running away instead of reuniting with Grace. Leia catches up to her friend, telling her that it wasn't Jenna she saw. Afterward, Rance approaches them and asks if they want to live through the night. In the meantime, the black monster crawls there and no one sees it. Rance takes the girls to a house where he gives Grace some alcohol for her injury. She is curious to know why tonight was different from all those other nights he watched the house. Not answering her again, he shows them a photo of the Never Knock door on a different house. He reveals that some kids were found deceased there in the 1950s and 60s. Next, he shows them a photo of a warehouse with the same door that also had murders taking place inside on Halloween night. At that point, Leia asks him why he didn't destroy the door. He answers that a part of him didn't want to believe it could be true. Grace returns to her unanswered question, asking again why tonight was different from all those other uneventful nights. Addressing her this time, Rance says there was blood on the door when he found those deceased kids. He adds that he saw the little girl in the devil's costume with blood on her hand. Grace recognizes that description as belonging to Jenna. She demands to know what happened to her. All Rance can say is that she was there 1 minute, yet gone the next. Grace realizes that the monster was leading them away from the house this entire time, so she gets up to go looking for Jenna there. Suddenly, the monster grabs Leia and starts dragging her across the floor. Grace hears Jenna's voice telling her that she needs to save her. Rance advises the girl to go help her sister while he tries to rescue Leia. Outside, Grace enters Rance's van. She starts crying there because of everything that has happened. Then her burnt mom appears, asking Grace why she didn't save her. This unexpected appearance scares the girl out of the van. She tries to leave, only to have her mother block her path to say she will lock Grace up. As she starts backing away, she tells herself this image of her mom isn't real. However, Grace bumps into the burnt lady from behind, so she runs away again. Following this, we witness Rance looking for Leia in a room with hanging plastic-covered corpses. She soon shows herself, urging him to help her. The man offers it in the form of giving her a handgun. The poor girl has the worst luck because she gets dragged along the floor again by the monster. It comes out and Rance says he should not be able to see it. The reason he does is that he was there at the house, watching the kids knock on the door. Everyone that sees the event take place sees the monster. Shortly after, we see how the corpses start ripping through their plastic coverings. One of them manages to grab Rance. We don't see what happens to him next, we only hear his scream. Returning to Grace, she keeps limping with her injured leg. She also keeps telling herself that anything the monster shows her is not real. Hiding in a house proves to be a bad idea, for her mother is there to greet her. The lady grabs her daughter to tell her she has to join Jenna and her. This angers Grace, making her say that Jenna is not deceased. In her infuriated state, she is able to escape her mom's hold. However, this image created by the monster is persistent. It pins Grace on the ground and starts choking her. A nearby rock gives the girl the chance she needs to fight back. She uses it to strike her fake mom, and this seems to finally do the job. Later, she arrives back at the Never Knock house. She yells out to Jenna there, hearing her sister's voice coming from the house. Flames coming out of the ground prevent Grace from approaching the door. She tells herself she isn't afraid before trying to step over the fire. To her dismay, it starts burning her and discovers how it isn't solely in her mind. Since it is real, she gathers the courage to jump through the fire. After that, the flames vanish. She hears her sister behind the door telling to leave. However, Grace doesn't listen to her. Instead, she starts removing boards on the window to get inside the house. In there, she finds her sister stuck to the door with nails piercing through her hands. She can't help but cry seeing her sister like this. As Grace starts removing one of the nails, the monster walks behind her. After taking it out, the monster's right arm lights up in flames and uses this arm to hit Grace on her back. The fire from it is seen even in her mouth. This results in Grace falling down and the monster leaving. Jenna sees her sister lying there. Of course, it fills her with worry. Subsequently, the monster comes back for Jenna. Removing the nail from her other hand, she uses it to stab the monster. After performing this action multiple times, she drops the nail. It simply does not work on whatever this creature is. Despite her efforts not working, she tells the monster she isn't afraid of it. However, it shows her that she should be by throwing the young girl against the wall, knocking her unconscious. An unknown amount of time later, Jenna wakes up on the floor. She gets up to start limping like her sister did. Suddenly, the monster presents itself to grab her. While it holds her, she finds herself restrained in a bathtub that gathers water. This is a location that exists in her mind. She manages to get out of the bathtub to escape into another room. There, she tells the monster it is trying to feed on her fear. However, she claims to be unafraid. Then, Amy comes out to tell Jenna how they all lost their lives for her, and now it's Jenna's turn to lose hers. Gavin is also there, in addition to Sydney. They all attack the smaller girl. Afterward, someone starts striking the special door with an axe. It is none other than Leia, who breaks through. She demands that the monster get off of Jenna. It complies maliciously, throwing the girl at Leia, bringing them both outside. Unfortunately, the axe gets wedged into Leia because of that throw. The severely wounded girl gives Jenna the gun Rance gave her, prior to telling her to finish the job. She wants her to do it for Grace. Once the monster rushes to Jenna, she points the gun at it. Instead of shooting it, she shoots the front door of the house. This causes the monster to suffer from those shots. Too bad she runs out of ammo before she can deliver more damage. She resorts to running at the door, trying to knock it off the wall it's attached to. But the amount of damage it received from the axe and the bullets, its weakened state allowed Jenna to bring it down. Due to that, the monster gets incinerated. Next, Jenna sits beside her unconscious, or perhaps lifeless, sister to tell her she did it. The final scene in our story takes place during the daytime. We see the never-knocked door get taken away by a man who works for a company that preserves architectural heritage. As misfortune would have it, he is repairing the damaged door. After doing that, he puts it on sale with other doors. The only thing he ended up preserving was a curse.